Hi, my name is Rachel and welcome back to another video. So for today's video, I was tagged in the Get to Know Me book tag, and I was tagged by my friend Penny at Penelope the Paperback Cat, and I will have her channel linked in the description box down below. Go check her out, show some love. So there are 20 questions in this tag, so let's dive right in. The first question is, how many books is too many books in a series? For me personally, I really love the idea of a long series. I do have a problem with finishing series where I read other books in between and then I get distracted, but that doesn't take away from my enjoyment of knowing a series has a lot of books ahead of me. I would say my perfect length of series is maybe like 6 to 9, 6 to 10. I do love a good long series. However, I also love a trilogy. So I think it honestly just depends per series. But if I was to generalize, I would say for me, maybe like 6 to 9 is the right amount. Question number 2 is, how do you feel about cliffhangers? Well, I hate them and I love them. I hate them because if you read a book with a cliffhanger where the next book isn't out yet, it's very aggravating where you're like, oh, I need to know what happens next and I have so long to wait. But if you read a cliffhanger and the next book is out and you're able to just jump right in, I feel like it really works in the favor of the series to kind of give you that push that you need to pick up the next one really quickly and continue on. So I do really love them for that aspect where, like I said, as someone who gets a little distracted and reads a million series at once, then a cliffhanger is good for me because it will give me that push to keep reading. But if I read a cliffhanger and the next book in a series isn't out yet, it is a little frustrating, but I still enjoy that like tension, and it really makes waiting for the next book kind of feel like worth it. Really feel worth it because you know that eventually you're going to get the answers you're seeking. And I think cliffhangers, when the next book isn't out yet, also really encourage people to reread that book right before the release of the new one. Kind of help generate buzz and everybody talks about their theories and stuff like that. So I think cliffhangers are good and I like them. Question number 3 is hardcover or paperback? I love a paperback. I love it. I love the flop. I love that it's lighter weight than a hardback. I think hardbacks are beautiful. I have plenty of them, but if I can, I would prefer to get a floppy paperback. Nothing will beat this for me. Look at that. She's limp. She's flopping, which means when I go to read it, it's going to stay open no matter where I put it. And it's not as heavy as a hardback, which makes it easier to read and doesn't hurt my wrists. But that being said, I also really love reading on my Kindle. Question number 4 is, what's your favorite book? Do I have to pick just one? So I thought about it for a minute and I really can't pick just one. So I have a variety here of books that I would consider my favorites. I'm not going to talk about them all in length because it would make this video way too long. But this is a good representation of my reading taste and what I look for in a book and what I would consider favorites. Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. The found family, the grittiness, the relationships, the setting, the heist, the stakes are high. Everything about this book for me is a win. I love the writing style. I love the characters and I love this world. Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson. I love every book in this series almost equally, where like every book is a 5 stars, but most of them are like 4.99. And I think Words of Radiance in particular for me is a 5.0. It just has a tiny bit something extra, I think, because the stakes have gotten so high from the first book and the characters are already changing and developing in this one. And I love to see that initial growth, and I love to see like the plot trajectory really becomes a little bit clearer in this. And there are some epic, crazy scenes in this book that are just like legendary. And some of those scenes will just never be beat for me. If you know, you know. If you know, you know. Also, speaking of floppy paperbacks, like, wow, perfection. Another favorite of mine is The Hunger of the Gods by John Gwynne, as well as the first book, The Shadow of the Gods. But there is a character in here who is a mother. And in book 1, The Shadow of the Gods, we see her name is Orca. We see Orca go on this journey to recover her son. Her son was taken from her. And there are multiple POVs in this world, and all of the POVs start off in very different places in the world, as well as very different places character-wise. And all of these timelines and all of these plots converge into one kind of like epic clash, not in a battle sense, but they all just come together so chaotically. But then once they do come together, you kind of see, looking back in hindsight, all of the threads that were leading you to this conclusion all along. And you're just like, how did I not see it? This is crazy. Whoa. Oh my God. There are some incredible, well, I got an itch on my leg. There are some incredible fight scenes in this book. There is immaculate character work in here. The characters are so well actualized from page 1 that you can literally feel each POV is so different. You never confuse one person for the other. And even though every character is like fully like fleshed out and written and actualized at the very beginning of book 1, they still manage to go on this like crazy interpersonal journey. And by the end of it, like, oh my God, it's just chef's kiss. John Gwynne, you're a mastermind. And I'm punching myself for never reading your work earlier. And now I can't wait to read all of John Gwynne's backlog, all of it. And then probably the book that I give as the answer most often when people ask about my favorite book is Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. This book has such a special place in my heart. Oh my God, I'm gonna cry. Don't do that. Stop it. It's just a book, don't cry. This book has such a special place in my heart. These characters really go through a journey of self-discovery. There's a lot of themes of grief in here. There's a lot of themes of what is right and what is wrong. Is self-defense wrong because you're killing people, or is self-defense right because you're protecting yourself? There are so many nuanced discussions that are woven into the story that it almost requires a reread for you to fully understand everything that happens in here. I've read this book 3 times now. I'm itching for a reread. I need to read it again. I'm actually supposed to buddy read this with my friend Mark from Twitter, which I don't really go on Twitter much that often, so I have to remember to check on Mark and see if we're still supposed to buddy read this. But this book means literally so much to me. There are depictions of how experiencing trauma in your childhood can really shape who you are as a person, and the discussions about trauma in general, how that affects adults, how it affects children, how holding on to hate and resentment can like change your perspective on things and turn you into a different person that you would have never been if you had been able to let go of that. And yeah, if you haven't read it yet, you should read it, because I'm literally crying talking about it. You should read it. If the tears aren't convincing you, then look at Goodreads reviews, because it's beloved for a reason. And I don't think anyone should write this off because it was a booktube darling, so to speak, back when it was first coming out and first popular. It still holds up. It's amazing. The writing is beautiful. The world is beautiful. The characters suffer a lot, and you will suffer with them. 10 out of 10 stars. 10 out of 10. Now that I'm done being emotional, question number 5 is, what is your least favorite book? This one's tough because I read a lot of books that I hate them and then I forget about them because I don't really want to hold on to those memories. If I don't like it, I try to just wash it away from my brain. So I think what comes to mind for my least favorite book is The Surface Breaks by Louise O'Neill. I read that maybe 4 or 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago at this point, and my God, what an absolute god-awful Little Mermaid retelling. It had such promise, like it got such hype, and it was just so bad. Also, my other least favorite book, which is probably like, these two are the two that always come to mind when people ask like, oh, what's a book you hate or what's your least favorite book? The Surface Breaks by Louise O'Neill and Divine Rivals. That book was trash, and if you loved it, I'm glad you did, because that means, you know, the author didn't write it for nothing. But there are some very toxic tropes at the beginning, and also the plot made no sense, and also a lot of things in that book made no sense. I think the writing was bad. The plot was cheesy. It didn't have any substance. There was bad mental health representation. And overall, I just thought it was really boring and dry. On to the next question before I get roasted. Question number 6 is love triangles, yes or no? This one's tough for me. I feel like I hate love triangles sometimes because it's just always this back and forth of will they, won't they? Is she gonna pick him? Is she gonna pick him? Is she gonna pick her? Is she gonna pick her? You know? But then they're never actually a triangle. It's just like a love arrow or a love V, I would say. They can just be really annoying, but I think if they're done correctly, it can add to the... Having a 5-year-old child is like having a herd of elephants. If done correctly, I think they can add to the tension of the romance, and if there is like a nuance with it, or I don't know, I probably would veer more towards no for love triangles. But that's not to say I haven't read good ones, because I have. Question number 7 is the most recent book that you just couldn't finish. I made it 20 pages into The Demon King by Cinda Williams-Chima. I have had this on my TBR for so long, and I cannot believe that I didn't just read those 20 pages earlier so I could get it out of my life quicker. So Cinda Williams-Chima is a white lady, and these characters immediately to me read as if they were supposed to be indigenous, and it felt a little bit like stereotypical. You know, the main character was like, oh, I wore my boots today. Should have worn my moccasins because my feet are too hot. And then, you know, the characters were going from one place to another place, and one of the characters was like, oh, I leaned over and grabbed my deerskin bag, and, you know, they were like, their skin was described as like reddish brown, and then they met up with another character who was like a wizard who seemed like he was probably supposed to be like civilized, and they are not. And then the wizard called them a copperhead, which I know is a kind of snake, but he was like, oh, something something blah blah, blah, you copperhead. Like, he definitely used it in like the way that someone would use like a slur or a derogatory term. And also the side character that was with the main character in these first 20 pages, his name was Fire Dancer. So, you know, it was reading very indigenous to me. And when the wizard showed up and was kind of rude to them and treating them as if they were uncivilized and then treating them with disrespect, I really didn't want to read about indigenous coded characters experiencing that racism from a white lady's perspective. So I DNF'd it. I tried to find online if those themes were challenged or if it, you know, if it was only just like a minor thing and it didn't continue throughout the book, but I couldn't find any answers. Every review I've read didn't mention it, and this was written a long time ago, so I don't know if like they just overlooked it then, but it just gave me the ick and I didn't want to read it anymore. So I made it 20 pages in and I said, nope, not for me, and I DNF'd it. It is what it is. Question number 8 is a book that you are currently reading. I'm currently reading The Queens of Innisleer, and I'm also currently rereading Assassin's Blade for a buddy read. And then my next book up on deck after those two is Aragon. Question number 9 is what's the last book that you recommended to somebody? The last book that I recommended was actually The Solstice Court by my friend Jay Juniper. I had asked on Reddit for some epic high fantasy recommendations with little to no romance, but in my escapade onto Reddit, I ended up browsing some other people's posts and commenting, and somebody had asked for new debuts that came out this year or were coming out this year that they thought were like really strong debuts. And I talked about The Solstice Court by my friend Jay Juniper, because if you didn't know this already, I loved it. It's a great book. It's coming out in September. Check it out. I'll link her in the description down below so you can find her channel. Question number 10 is the oldest book you've read by like publication date. And I would say that the oldest book I've read is probably like The Hobbit. I don't really read classics a lot. I would say The Hobbit, or maybe, when did The Hobbit come out? Hey Siri, when did The Hobbit come out? Just kidding. The oldest book I've read is The Picture of Dorian Gray. I was just gonna say I don't read classics a lot, so I think it was The Hobbit, but upon asking my Cyrilia, I don't want to say her name so she doesn't interrupt me. Upon asking, apparently it was The Picture of Dorian Gray. I think that's the oldest book I've read because I don't read classics often. And if I do, I usually DNF them. Question 11 is what's the newest book you've read by publication date? So I don't know if this would include arcs, because if it does, then The Solstice Court by Jade Juniper. But if it doesn't include arcs, oh, I'm trying to think. Oh, I need to look at my Goodreads for this. Hold on. I need to look at my, actually I could do Storygraph as well. Oh, I don't have Storygraph on my iPad. I need to change that immediately. Oh no, probably The Familiar. Yeah. So the newest book that I've read this year is The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. It's over there somewhere. I don't want to get it. Here's a picture. And I loved it. It was great. Very atmospheric, beautiful writing. I just love Leigh. Leigh can do no wrong, in my opinion. Question 12 is what is your favorite author? So I think it's safe to say that overall my favorite author is Brandon Sanderson, because out of all of the books that I've read, I have read the most books from him and I have loved the most books from him. However, I strongly believe that John Gwynne will be solidified as one of my favorite authors by the end of this year. I'm going to read Malice this year very soon. I'm going to read Malice. Hold me to it. I'm reading it in August. And the finale to the Bloodsworn Saga, which is the Fury of the Gods, comes out in October, and I just know they're both gonna be great. So I'm gonna add him here now, and I'm gonna say mostly Brandon Sanderson, but I'm pretty sure John Gwynne is also a favorite. And Leigh Bardugo. I have read a lot from her, and I've loved almost everything I've read from her. I think I've given everything, if not 5, then a 4. I've never given her under a 4. I just really think she has a way with characters and unique ideas, and I can feel the love that she puts into everything she writes. Those are probably my top 3 right now. Question 13 is, do you prefer buying books or borrowing books? Man, this is a loaded question. If I had all the money in the world, I would buy every book I've ever wanted. However, that's not the case. So I am very grateful and very honored to be able to use my local library and have easy access to free books. And I think libraries are amazing. If you have one near you, you should go there, support it. And I would say both for this question. I love buying books, but I do really love going to my library. Question 14 is a book you disliked that everybody else seemed to love. I guess I should probably say Divine Rivals again here. I'm definitely in the minority as far as opinions go on Divine Rivals. Everyone and their mother seems to love it, and I just could not get behind it. I'm sorry. I just could not get behind the bad writing, the awkward plot. The world building was so lacking for me, and I just think the writing didn't mesh well with itself. It felt like it was trying to be like a Greek god retelling, but it was also trying to be like historical fiction, and I really just didn't like it at all. So yeah, that's definitely the one that I am the oddball out on. Question 15 is bookmarks or dog ears. I am a bookmark girly. I do not dog ear my books. And that's not to say that I don't think you should. I think it's great when your book is well loved, when you dog ear your favorite places, when your pages are getting worn thin because you read it so much. I love that. But for me personally, I just don't like creasing the page, because if you fold and unfold that corner enough times, like it will fall off. Like that's just a fact. And I do like to annotate my books, and I do like to write in them depending on, how much I love them. I will annotate my favorite books and write in them. I have no problem like defacing a book. I just really can't get behind folding the corner, because if I fold it and unfold it too many times, like it's gonna rip off, and I don't want to rip the page. So no for dog ears on me. I am a bookmark bitch, if you will. Question 16 is a book you can always reread, and I want to say Strange the Dreamer, but I also am going to say the Winter Night trilogy by Catherine Arden is definitely one, as well as the Stormlight Archive. I will never tire of those series. Question 17 is, can you read while listening to music? Absolutely not.
No. Nope. No. Nope. Nope.
If there is words in the music, I will get distracted. I love to listen to like ambiance rooms on YouTube. I'll put it on my TV where it's got like forest sounds or rain sounds or like a fire crackle. And occasionally those will have some very low underlying like violin music, or maybe like a very soft piano. And that is like okay, depending on my mood. But majority of the time, I just can't do it with music. It really distracts me. I unfortunately think I have undiagnosed ADHD. Question 18 is one POV or multiple POV? Multiple! I love multiple POV books. There is nothing that excites me more than having POVs that feel completely disjointed and unconnected, and watching the plot slowly thread itself together and all like clashing and coming together in the end to be this like mind-boggling moment where you're like,
oh my god, it was all connected.
Yeah, multi POV, that's the way to go for me. Question 19 is, do you read a book in one sitting or over multiple days? The only kind of book that I can physically read in one sitting is like a manga, or perhaps a novella if it's under like 180 pages. But most of the time, multiple sittings for sure. I am not always able to focus for that long, so I like to spread my reads out. It usually takes me like 5 to 10 days to finish a book. I'm kind of a slow reader, so I don't really know why I started a booktube when I don't read that fast. And the last and final question, number 20, is a book you read because of the cover. I have 2 answers for this actually. The first one I'm going to talk about is Woman Eating by Claire Coda. This cover is so gorgeous. It kind of looks like a cracked oil painting. It looks very menacing. It looks like sad and melancholy, and it just has this emotion to it that is so stunning to me. So this was absolutely a cover purchase for me, 1000%. I had heard a few good things about it, but I didn't really know what it was about, and I saw the cover in person one day and I said,
you're coming home with me.
The next book that I read based on the cover was Ace of Spades by Faerie Abike Amide. The way that this book came into my life is my friend Shay gets a lot of books books from publishers, and quite often she will ask our little friend group chat, like, hey, I'm unhauling some books, do you guys want them? And this was in the stack one time, and I had never really heard about it, but I saw this artwork and I thought, oh my god, these characters are stunning, and I love the way that they made the cover look like a playing card to go with the title, kind of going, you know, Ace of Spades. And I just thought it was a really unique design choice to match the title. Like, the artwork itself is absolutely gorgeous. Like, also this book is amazing and you should read it. It's like Gossip Girl meets Get Out. Read it. This brings us to the end of the Get to Know Me tag, and I hope that you learned something interesting about me, if you care at all. And if you don't care, then why'd you watch this far? Honestly, that's weird. Get out of here. But if you've made it this far, leave the tag emoji down in the comments, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!